with just the free agents pre-draft, do you think with just the free agents that they brought in that this defense is at the same caliber that it was last year so far?
Always, yeah. I mean, it's always hard to say, in March and April, before any
No, Steph,
football
I want you to
is
predict.
played.
I don't care that they haven't played together and that no one has seen them. That is a completely impossible question.
Well, if you look at the
And I'm going to hold you
personnel,
to it. This is recorded. So if they end up,
yeah.
whatever you say, I'm going to
If
rewind this during camp.
if you look at the personnel alone that they had started, last season with, like this time last year, we were probably very optimistic about the defense, right? And then it kind of underperformed. So just there's that as well. Like if the 49ers don't underperform on defense this season, then yes, it could be better. Not because the players themselves are better, but because I don't know, different defensive coordinator, they're being used better. All those things could play into it as well. But if we're just looking on paper, the thing that tips the scales for me is Eric Armstead, right? Like him no longer being on the defensive line is a huge loss for the line. And so I will say that everywhere else, I think they got incrementally better, on the defensive line. Like I feel like they made small upgrades aside from Eric Armstead, because I don't think, like again, I don't think that's someone you can replace with just one guy.
Yeah.
So I think if you look at all of the other guys they've lost on the defensive line, I think you could find a one-to-one kind of replacement for those players. Or maybe in Eric's case, you can find a couple guys who will probably take on, what his role, what it was before, right? So, I think I'm optimistic about it. I think the thing that's going to be different, and that's another thing that will make it hard to compare, is like how many new wrinkles are they going to be with Brandon Staley being in the house, right? Like
Yeah, it'll
obviously
be
Nick
interesting, like what
Sorensen,
kind of.
yeah, like obviously Nick Sorensen is the defensive coordinator, but we know Brandon Staley is going to have some influence on game planning and what kind of happens on game day, right? So how are they going to be used? That's a
Because it's
big
not just
question
personnel,
mark.
it's like a coaching difference, right? Like you're saying, I think it was Robert Saleh in Orlando was talking to some people, and he was saying that he felt like a big problem with the defense last year was just the lack of disguising that was going on
Yeah.
pre-snap. So maybe like it's not even just a. I just hit myself in the face with this. Maybe it's not even just like a personnel thing, but also if the coaching they go after, if they switch some things up, maybe that will also affect it. Now, what scares me is obviously the run defense was a huge, the biggest problem for them last year compared to previous seasons when maybe we thought that the defense was a little bit more dominant. And I think Greenlaw was like a huge, he's a huge guy who was able to tackle and stop things from happening. And I know that I think it was Sean Lynch was like, oh yeah, like Dre Greenlaw might try to start week 1, but then he also said that he could start on the pup list. Maybe I don't understand these things, but I assumed that he was going to be, at least a shell of himself for even maybe a lot of the season, at least regular season. I still put like a year on these things. I know some people, I think Derrick Henry came back in like 9 months or something like that. There were rumors of Aaron Rodgers coming back, but then he didn't actually ever practice or come back. When it comes to being a linebacker, you're really like, anchoring in the ground with that Achilles. It's not like you're just like standing back there. Not saying that standing back there is easy either, but I don't know. I'm not assuming that he's going to be the week 1 starter. I do see there possibly being a regression in the linebacker area for them. And maybe that affecting the defense. But obviously, also maybe they'll scheme around. You know what I mean? Maybe that just means they're going to play defense in a different way. So maybe it won't actually show up. But when I think of Dre Greenlaw, I think of a loss. When I think
that's that's another one too. That's definitely a loss. Like when you asked me, I was thinking more of the defensive line, just because there's been so many departures and then like
Exactly,
additions,
yeah.
but like, yeah, I mean, that's a big one as well. And it all kind of hinges on Devondre Campbell being the 2021 Devondre Campbell, right? All pro season. And I don't it seems like
Which is
according to
scary, right?
him,
Like
he was
when
misused. So
but okay. Because when he first said that, I was like, this makes sense. Everyone in the world bashed what's his name? The guy, the Packers defensive coordinator.
Joe Barry.
Joe Barry. But that's when he had his breakout season with Joe Barry, first of all. So it's like, it's not like there was a change in defensive coordinator and all of a sudden he did worse. Also, when Kyle Shanahan was asked about like what he liked about Devondre Campbell, he talked about his rookie year and how impressive it was he was able to play his rookie year because guys nowadays who are coming back at the linebacker, coming out of the draft of the linebacker position.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure I can phrase that better. But it usually takes them 2 or 3 years to, I guess, start playing in the league with the way that they play in college versus in the NFL now. And so Kyle Shanahan spent the majority of the time when he was asked to talk about like the skill set that drew him to him, talking about how impressive it was he was playing his rookie year. But that was like multiple years ago.
Yeah,
so I was like, well, that doesn't really affect how he is right now. So yeah, I mean, I assume just because I do believe in Kyle and John's ability to bring in competent, coaches so far, and kind of scheme around these things. I mean, they had Colton McKivitz starting on the offensive line, and he, there's a lot of, I think I was looking at Pro Football Focus grades on him, and he wasn't even like rated that poorly. So I think that the 49ers do a good job at like covering up for areas of weaknesses. So I can see them doing that, but you're still like spending resources covering up for that where if you just have a guy who's not even like a serviceable player, but Dre Greenlaw is like a star, then like I think that you can allocate more resources to, playing the game a different, maybe more effective way instead of trying to like cover up for a hole you might have. So I could see that being. Do you think that they'll maybe in the later rounds draft any linebacking position, or did they draft a line? They have some younger linebackers that haven't played, right?
They brought in 2 last season they drafted D Winters and then I drafted free agent, or he was a later round. I don't remember, but I always forget his name. I don't know why. It was
I have Cam Latu on my brain, who I know is the tight end. There you go.
Jalen Graham. Yeah, so Jalen Graham, they re-signed DFF as well, right? Demetrius Flanagan Fowles, so he'll be there.
Yeah,
but he's more so like, I think, more depth than anything. I think it's fair to say that there is going to be a drop off at the linebacker spot, where Greenlaw played. But yeah, I do agree that they do sometimes do a good job of masking it, but it might be at the expense of other things. I don't know. So, yeah, it'll be interesting. Yeah, Jalen Graham was drafted. I believe he was one of the 7th round picks. I know he was just way late. So, both of those guys. 49ers hoping one of those guys could take the next step, right? Like if D Winters can, push Devondre Campbell a little bit in training camp, who knows? Maybe D Winters gets an opportunity to play some in Greenlaw's absence.